We honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
What if Martin didn't stand up? What if Rosa didn't sit down? What if Malcolm didn't man up? Where would we be now? What if Marley didn't get up, stand up? What if Du Bois didn't come to
Dr. King, how do you respond to Senator Thurman threatening to filibuster the Civil Rights Bill?
Well, I'm here today during this critical debate to convince his fellow senators to do otherwise. But I assure you, we will not be content even after this bill is passed. The failure to pass the bill would,
thrust our nation into a dim horizon of social turmoil.
Are you suggesting there might be violence if the bill is defeated?
Realism impels me to admit that if the bill is not passed, it'll be harder to keep the struggle disciplined.
Reverend,
Minister,
I've been hoping for this day for a long time. We meet at last.
it seems like we've attracted quite a bit of attention. What makes me think you may have invited them?
Oh, I'm sure they must be here for you, Doctor. One thing's for certain, you're now going to be investigated.
Well, I have it on good authority. My file is already much larger than yours.
Who do you think this is going to hurt more, you or me?
I imagine it's unlikely to hate either one of us.
Well, then let's keep them guessing.
Amen to that.
All praise to Allah. We should do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
A new series dropped last week on Nat Geo. It's called Genius MLKX. It is inspired by the 1987 play The Meeting, written by Jeff Stetson. It's about a fictional encounter that is, between Martin and Malcolm in 1965. It won a stack of accolades when it was first brought to the stage, and Jeff Stetson wrote the pilot for Genius MLKX and is one of the executive producers of this new series on Nat Geo. I am pleased to welcome Jeff Stetson to this program. Jeff, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Tavis. Good to talk to you.
It's good to hear your voice, man. It's been a while, and I'm delighted to engage you in this conversation. Let me just share again some breaking news for those who have not heard. The mother in Michigan, Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of Ethan Crumbley, has been found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in her son's school shooting. You all have been hearing about this case, and what was at issue here was whether the parent of a child who commits a mass shooting can also be held criminally responsible. The answer is, according to this jury, absolutely yes. Found her guilty on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. She is now facing up to 15 years in prison per count and remains held on bond. Of course, her son pled guilty as an adult to murder, terrorism, and other crimes and was sentenced to life in prison back in December without parole. But now his mama is facing up to 15 years in prison per count. So that question has been answered, and America will be wrestling with that, I'm sure. As we continue to talk about guns in America, we'll be wrestling with that part of the question, whether or not parents ought to be held responsible, criminally responsible, when their kids engage in these mass shootings, which is happening far too often in our society. But that's a strong, strong indictment strong conviction from this jury in Pontiac, Michigan, and I'm sure everybody's talking about it now and will be for the days to come because it colors dramatically different the dialogue we've been having about guns in this country. But anyway, there's the breaking news. She has, in fact, been found guilty of involuntary manslaughter on 4 counts in Pontiac, Michigan. Our guest once again this hour is Jeff Stetson. I look forward to commencing our conversation when we come forward about his new Nat Geo series. It's called Genius MLKX. Most of you know. You've heard me say it 1,000 times, having written a book about Dr. King myself, that I regard Dr. King as the greatest American this country has ever produced. That's my own assessment. But Malcolm X is a bad man. He's a bad man. And Jeff Stetson wrote this brilliant play and produced it back in 1987 called The Meeting, this fictional encounter between the brothers Martin and Malcolm, meeting back in 1965. And we'll talk about that, looking back on his work, and talk about this new Nat Geo series, looking forward, when we come forward with Jeff Stetson on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
You can do it all by yourself, baby girl. What's your name? Let me talk to you. Let me buy you a drink.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Jackson Hewitt has a plan to get your tax refund fast with a buck here, buck there. Here a buck, there a buck, everywhere a buck.
You don't have to wait weeks for your tax refund. Get money sooner with a no-fee refund advance loan at Jackson Hewitt.
On this loan, there's a money today guarantee. E-I-E-I-DO.
Don't settle for chicken feed. Get fast bucks at Jackson Hewitt today. No-fee refund advance loans by Republic Bank offered to eligible clients. Money today guarantee if approved for a loan on a prepaid card. Details at jacksonhewitt.com.
Meet Cheryl.
Hey.
She's on vacation and lost in the moment. Unfortunately, so is her Chase debit card.
It's gotta be somewhere.
Maybe she lost it at salsa night.
These skirts should have pockets.
Or maybe she lost it at Pilates.
3 and 2 and...
But she's not worried. With the Chase mobile app, she can lock her card till it turns up. Tools that help protect. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank and a member FDIC.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Good morning. Good morning. I had another sermon I intended to preach to you today. One that encompassed all that I have learned in my many, many years of education and preaching at my father's hip. But I feel that sermon no longer speaks to the emotion I now have. I instead would like to use it as a topic from which to preach a very common subject. one wandered by many a people on many a land, across every continent and every country, and every state and every city on this God's planet. A subject that, despite this being my first time at your pulpit, I have no doubt that we share a unique commonality. The subject of who we are. And who we are is God's glory personified. When I look out at you, I see we are mothers and fathers. We are sisters and brothers.
Yes, we are.
Men and women. But if we let others tell it, we are slaves. We are second class. We are agitators banging at the door of segregation, asking to be let into the house of equality. Well, in this moment, I say we stop asking and we start demanding. All right. In this moment, we say equality is not a dirty word whispered in the valley of despair, but screamed from the peaks of prosperity. In this moment, we soar among the winds of change. In this moment, we will demand change no matter what we face, because we have righteousness on our side, because we have love on our side, and because we have God on our side.
Sounds from the new Nat Geo series called Genius, MLKX. It dropped last week. It is inspired by the 1987 play The Meeting, written by our guest in this hour, Jeff Stetson, who is also one of the exec producers on this new Nat Geo series, again called Genius, MLKX. Jeff, before I talk about the series, I want to go back to The Meeting. That thing was classic, man. I remember it well, and it had a huge impact on the discourse about the relationship or lack thereof between Martin and Malcolm. Take me back to 87 and your bringing to the fore this stage play called The Meeting.
Well, it's been an amazing journey. I mean, it's been produced, in all 50 states and more than a dozen countries. And so when I talk to people in places as diverse as Jordan and Ethiopia, Brazil, Africa, it's just amazing how people all over the world have an appreciation for Dr. King and Malcolm X. Sometimes they know more about them than the people in this own country. Mm. But I wrote the play because I was very much concerned that young people in particular, who were not even alive during the civil rights period, knew very little about both men except for the most superficial. And in particular, I was concerned that in this country, particularly for black leadership, we are often in a position where in order to embrace one leader, we had to reject another. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ensure that folks understood how important both of these men were to the movement for freedom, justice, and civil rights, as well as human rights. So it was just an extraordinary experience. I had no idea that it would have the impact that it's had. Initially, it was interesting. I was dean of faculty and staff of the Cal State system, and I often would go to campuses to speak on a variety of topics. And one day I was asked by the department chair if I would come in and teach a course. And I said, if I was going to teach a course, I wanted to have one where I would have a diverse group of people from various academic disciplines. And I would want to deal with it on the civil rights movement through the eyes of Malcolm X and Dr. King. And as I thought about putting the course together, I decided it might be interesting to write a little play or sketch about both men. We would play it first, and in order to kind of get people interested and inspired about who these two men were, and then they would go about doing research and determining what strategies worked, what didn't, and would we repeat those kinds of strategies now. As it turned out, my schedule was just too busy. I couldn't teach it, but I was in a playwrights group at the Los Angeles Actors Theater, and they had a festival for Louis B. Mayer one-acts. And my play was one of about 10 or 12 that they were going to produce over the summer for a 4 to 6 week period. And the plays were rotated so that my play might be produced on Tuesday, and then the next week would be Thursday, and on and on. And what happened was my play was the only one that had sold-out performances, and every performance of the meeting was sold out. At the time, Atlanta Child Murders was being filmed. Now, this is my first produced play, and so I'm obviously kind of nervous. And in walks Morgan Freeman. So he sees the play twice. And the first performance, there was this woman dressed in African wardrobe who was talking throughout the play. I mean, she was doing it quietly, but it was just aggravating me, and I was considering just having it thrown out. And then when the play was over, she was sitting by my director, and the director motioned for me to come over, and I was going to walk over and really talk to her. And as she turned around, my director said, "I want you to meet." And I said, "Ruby D?" So we talked at length because she obviously had a great experience with both Malcolm and Martin. So it was just an extraordinary way to introduce a play, and I'm very appreciative for the impact it's had.
Yeah, you can't cuss out Ruby D, man. You can't.
Right. Not at all.
You can't cuss out Ruby D. Let me. I've said this 1,000 times on this program. I'm always fascinated. I ask questions, of course, not knowing what the answers are going to be. I never know where the story is going to take us, but I'm always thrilled when I learn the backstory to something. I've known Jeff Stetson for a while. I've seen his work, of course. And to hear the backstory of the meeting that I never heard, how that thing came to be, is pretty amazing. And so I want to start by saying thank you for just sharing that backstory with us, because I didn't know that story about how the writing of this play, this brilliant stage play, sort of came to be. Let me go back before I go forward. You mentioned that it's been now performed, the stage play, The Meeting. This fictional encounter between Martin and Malcolm has been staged now in every state in this country and countries around the globe. Let me separate them first. Martin and Malcolm individually. What is it that you've learned over the years, Jeff Stetson, of this play being seen around the world, that the world community, the broader community, the world house, to use King's phrase, what is it you've learned about how and why they relate to Martin outside of our country, and what have you learned about how and why they relate to Malcolm outside of this country?
Well, depending upon what country we're speaking of,
right,
it flips, because in South Africa it was very interesting in terms of how the struggle in Africa as a whole, but South Africa in particular, they identified so much with both leaders, but they started to, I think, Malcolm resonated with them more in the final days, because the reconciliation project that they did really upset a lot of the South Africans. They felt that, we had this forgiveness thing going on, turn the other cheek, and yet they knew that the people coming before the panel often lied about what they had done. So when I was there for the second production of the meeting, because the first production took place about 30 years ago, and the extraordinary, iconic activist John Connie directed it.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it in 2017 and invited me out. And I spent a week with John, and he told me about how the first production was received about 30 years ago. The police would actually be standing around the audience when the play was going on. And after the play, there's usually this question and answer period. And the police were actually taking down the names of people who were speaking if they spoke in such a way that they considered that, going against the struggle there in South Africa.
Yeah, a threat to the state, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, you just look at a play, it could have that kind of impact where in an oppressive environment, the police are looking at how audiences react and who they favor and so on. They also compared the play to Mandela and some of the leadership that was a little bit more ready to, fight in a way that Malcolm said by any means necessary.
Sure.
And so folks there had to kind of consider, well, who is the person we would follow if we were going to select one? And my guess is that the younger folks in particular, who were very angry at what was going on, very bitter at the kind of violence that was taking place, Malcolm resonated more.
Mm-hmm.
The Desmond Tutus and the Mandelas and the people that followed them would probably be more in line with Dr. King.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is both men were embraced, both men were understood, and the struggle that was happening there was comparable in some ways to the struggle happening in the United States. In fact, the day that I was leaving, John Conde took me for a private tour of the museum that they have there on apartheid that he was instrumental in making. And I spent about 2 hours there walking around, seeing all the exhibits.
Mm-hmm.
And Tavis, if I hadn't known better, I thought I was watching the exhibits on the civil rights movement here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was so comparable. The dogs sicking these young kids, the brutality of the police, the hanging and the lynchings that were going on. It was just overpowering in terms of how both of our countries have gone through the same process and are continuing to go through it.
Yeah. That's fascinating to hear you describe how those of one generation, Mandela and Madiba and Desmond Tutu and Oliver Tambo and that generation might relate to King better, but the younger folk who had their own visceral reactions to what they were doing would relate to Malcolm. But to your point, both are embraced, and that's a beautiful thing. When you sat to write the play, The Meeting, and I'm going to talk about on the back half of our conversation. I'm glad I got you for the full hour. On the back half, we'll talk about the new Nat Geo series, Genius, MLK X. But I want to just lay the foundation here for how that series comes to be. It is inspired by this play called The Meeting. Again, this fictional encounter between Martin and Malcolm back in 1965. What did you want to? I'm trying to find the right word here, Jeff. What did you want to interrogate in this fictional meeting between these two brothers?
Well, again, it starts with realizing that for many young people in particular, they knew very little about them. And the ones that did understand them more on a superficial level at least identify with one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I thought about how would I approach this, I understood that if I wrote a play about Dr. King, I'm not sure that the people who follow Malcolm would have gone.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wrote a play about Malcolm X, I don't think the people who were more into Dr. King's army would be interested in going to see Malcolm X. So having thought about that, I said, well, let's bring them both together.
Mm.
And now that I'm bringing both of them together, what is it that I want to generate in terms of what these strangers who come to a theater will begin to take away from an hour and 20-minute play?
Mm-hmm.
I said this a couple of times with regard to speaking to the additional writers who were involved in the series. One of the things that always had an impact on me, particularly the Sunday matinees, because, the Sunday matinees, the sisters from the church come in, all dressed up, wearing them hats, Sunday best,
mm-hmm.
and they have a particular attitude about Dr. King,
mm-hmm.
where they want to make sure I don't mess around with that.
Exactly.
And then the young people who come in are different kinds of folks, and, they may identify more with Malcolm, and they want to make sure that I treat Malcolm with respect because they're not necessarily in Dr. King's camp. And as you probably recall, the first 20 minutes after Dr. King arrives is pretty brutal in terms of Malcolm X questioning the nonviolent commitment that he has. He believes that nonviolence is going to get us all killed.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm also understands that he's not going to be living very much longer, so it's important to do all that he can to indicate to Dr. King why he has to at least embrace some of the stuff that Malcolm believes in. So after an intense 20 minutes, they're sitting at a table facing each other, and they both point at each other in terms of making their recommendations about the future, and their hands accidentally touch. And they immediately go into an arm wrestle. And Malcolm wins the arm wrestle. And in the audience, you can just sense all these church ladies are not happy, and all of Malcolm's people are thrilled.
Yeah.
The play continues, and Dr. King has had just about enough, and he says it's time for a rematch, which Malcolm finds amused because he's prepared to inflict suffering if Dr. King is prepared to endure it. And this time, Dr. King wins, and the audience completely flips again. Malcolm's people are not happy. Dr. King's happy. Dr. King's folks are thrilled. At the end of the play, there's a resolution.
Hold that thought. At the end of the play, there is a resolution. We will hear that resolution at the end of the play when we come forward with our guest inside. His name is Jeff Stetson. He's one of the exec producers of a new series that just dropped last week on Nat Geo called Genius, MLKX. It is inspired by his play, The Meeting. It came out in 1987 on stage, that is. It imagines a fictional encounter between Martin and Malcolm back in 1965. So we'll get to that resolution of the play and talk about the series when we come forward with Jeff Stetson on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Nevada is holding its Republican presidential primary today and Republican Party-run caucuses on tomorrow. This after the Democratic governor at the time in 2021 and Republicans started fighting over scheduling and procedures. Republican frontrunner Donald Trump is expected to garner all of the delegates in the caucuses, while Nikki Haley will appear on the primary ballot but won't get any delegates. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, SEPTA is honoring folks that played a part in desegregating transportation. The transit agency held an event yesterday that honored black activists that fought to make sure all people could ride public transportation. Rosa Parks, John Madru, and Elizabeth Jennings Graham were among those who were honored. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Did you know Discover wants everyone to feel special? That's why with your Discover card, you have access to 24/7 customer service, as well as $0 fraud liability, which means you're never held responsible for unauthorized purchases. Learn more at discover.com/credit card. Limitations apply.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. Both of LA's NBA teams ended long road trips with impressive wins last night. The Lakers got a strong triple-double from Anthony Davis to help finish a 4-2 trip. AD had 26 points, 15 rebounds, and 11 assists. LeBron also had 26 points and 7 assists. D'Angelo Russell led the Lakers with 28. The Lakers are home Thursday night against Denver. There's a ton of sparkling numbers for the Clippers. They held on for a 5-point win in Atlanta to cap a 6-1 Eastern road trip. 36 points for Kawhi Leonard, 30 points and 10 assists for James Harden. The Clippers shot 60% from three-point range. They are 19 games over 500 and just a half game behind Minnesota and Oklahoma City for the best record in the Western Conference. Since December 1st, the Clippers are 26-5. They're at home Wednesday night against New Orleans. No debates, no no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king. Climate is king.
Robert Half research indicates 9 out of 10 hiring managers are having difficulty hiring. Robert Half is here to help. Their recruiting professionals use proprietary AI to connect businesses with highly skilled talent. At Robert Half, they know talent. Visit roberthalf.com today.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
When you're rolling Charmin Ultra Soft on the potty, less is more, so roll it back, everybody. Roll it back. Charmin's irresistibly soft and hella nice. The crib is always stocked. It's our party vibe. It's cushioned clean, so our chicks feel fly. So what? Everybody wanna touch the sky.
Charmin Ultra Soft is irresistibly soft and more absorbent, so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Jim was at the laundromat when he heard. His ear said, "Maraca, senor," but his nose said, "Hey, freshest scent ever." Following his nose, Jim found a man pouring Gain scent beads into the washer. The scent, the freshness. Jim blurted, "Sir, your scent Maraca smell amazing." You could call them scent maracas, but most noses call them Gain scent beads. Try Gain scent beads. Way fresher than detergent alone.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
There's something I need to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I got offered a head pastor position
Oh, where?
at Dexter in Montgomery.
I thought it was just a guest sermon.
I thought so too, but it turned out it wasn't. Corey, I know this wasn't part of our plan. I know this may sound abrupt, but I think I want to do this. Listen, I know how hard you worked on your music career and how far you've come. I know there'll be other pastor opportunities for me, but if things aren't right for Negroes in the South, they aren't going to be right anywhere in this country. We both have been afforded opportunities to go up north and experience what America could be for Negroes. We need to pay that forward and take these educations we've gotten and make where we come from better. And it starts with us, Corey.
We should go to Montgomery. The shadow of Jim Crow evil looms over everything. It's not going to change itself. Someone has to change it.
I think I can be that someone. But I need you by my side when I do it. Something remarkable is unfolded in the South. I can feel it.
And it's best we be on hand to witness it.
We will do more than witness it. We will lead it. And God will show us the way.
More sounds from the Nat Geo series called Genius, MLKX, inspired by the 1987 play called The Meeting, written by our guest in this hour, Jeff Stetson, who's also one of the exec producers of this powerful new Nat Geo series, Genius, MLKX, which just dropped last week. All right, Jeff Stetson, you were teeing up with the following at the end of the play. We talked about the arm wrestling match that Malcolm first wins in the play The Meeting, and then Dr. King wants a rematch in this fictional accounting of them meeting in 1965, which is the subject of the play The Meeting. King wants a rematch of this arm wrestling tete-a-tete, and he wins the rematch. But then you said at the end of the play there is a resolution. Pick it up from there, brother.
There's a resolution that clearly indicates to both men that it doesn't really matter which strategy they use or to argue about the strategies. What's really important is their love for family and their love for their people. And having come to that resolution, Dr. King says, well, since we haven't been able to agree, we might as well declare a winner. And so they go at it one more time in arm wrestling. And the audience is completely engaged because it looks like Malcolm's going to win, then it looks like Dr. King is going to win, and they really go at it. And in the end, it's clear that they can't complete it, and they finally call a truce. When that happens, the audience that's had their separate favors throughout the play, it's clear that they, if possible, they don't want either man to lose. And at the same time, they would like to find a way for both men to win. And while both men are rubbing their hands because they had a very strenuous, fierce competition, Dr. King turns to Malcolm and says, just imagine what we could have accomplished if we had joined hands and pushed in the same direction. And that's always elicited a response from the audience because we understand just how important it would have been in shaping the struggle if both sides had come together in a way that the public understood. And that's really kind of the essence that I had hoped for the series, that we're not going to be able to cover in 8 hours the most important issues of the day that these two iconic leaders struggled against. But we hope to, at least at the end of the series, have the audience walk away with the feeling of how important both of these men were that they were both on the same continuum to freedom and justice.
Yeah.
And that the struggle needs to continue. And part of that is thinking conceptually, well, how would we go forward if we took both of these men's philosophies and merged them together in such a way where we really have the kind of power we need to make the changes that are necessary.
Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Jeff Stetson. I'm putting you on the spot because I know you can handle it. If you were asked, as you were about to be asked, what your critique of Martin would be, I don't care what it is. Just give me any critique you have of Martin and give me any critique you have of Malcolm.
My critique would be defined by their speeches and the impact. I'm not even talking about what they said. It's just how they said it. If you were listening to a speech by Dr. King, you would be prepared spiritually to go to heaven. I mean, it's almost that kind of, after he's through, you're just ready to give it up and meet your Savior. With Malcolm, you're ready to go to war. You're ready to fight. I mean, both men certainly did that. You can't bring together thousands of people in a march where most of the individuals were fearful of what the repercussions would be, and all of a sudden they're now courageous. I talk about the marvelous militancy of Malcolm because it instilled a certain kind of pride in the people that needed to understand their own strength and their own capability of having self-determination. You then had the magnificent marches of Martin that brought together a group of individuals and made them a people that were prepared to confront the most powerful institutions that were doing all that they can to dehumanize those individuals. So one of the things I really want people to think about is how extraordinary. If you searched world history, it would be very rare to find two men such as these who lived at the same time in the same country and fought the same struggle for human rights. I mean, you're not going to find it. So how proud should we be that both of these men were here, not for long, only 39 years, did so much to define the future in terms of what is possible. It always bothers me when particularly young people, because I spent 20 years as an educator in the university system,
Mm-hmm.
that these young people don't really appreciate how magnificent these men were and the impact on our lives even today. So, yeah, I would just say, you know, look at the marches
Mm-hmm.
of Dr. King. Look at the militancy that brought great pride to the people of Malcolm X, and merge those two together, and we have all we need to confront the injustices that occurs in this society.
Yeah. So when we come forward, I want to take your temperature on this. I asked what your critique would be. I am now fascinated to hear how you'd respond to the following. So if I said to you that my critique of Martin and Malcolm is that both had a particular naivete. Brilliant both men were, but if I were going to critique them, both had, I think, a particular naivete. Martin's naivete was about his confidence, his faith in the American democratic institution until he felt differently near the end of his life. But I think there's a particular naivete that Martin has as he's leading this movement about the ability of the American democratic experiment, the American empire, to correct itself. I think he's a bit naive about that in some ways. And my critique of Malcolm would be that he had a particular naivete as well, that his militancy could have or would have, in fact, saved the day for black people. I don't think that militancy would have worked in South Africa that you referenced earlier, and I'm not sure that militancy would have worked in this country. That's my critique of both. I think they both had a particular naivete in those two ways. I could be wrong about it. Let's see what Jeff Stetson, he's the guy that wrote the play, The Meeting. He's the executive producer of the new Nat Geo series, Genius MLKX. That's just my view. Let's see what Jeff Stetson has to say about it when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on! What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
It's time to represent your community in the 2024 presidential primary election. When you vote, you get to decide what is best for you, your neighborhood, and your family. Use your power. Make a plan to vote today. Visit plan.lavote.gov. That's plan.lavote.gov to get everything you need to vote in the March 5th presidential primary election.
Hey, what are you doing up on the step stool?
About to clean these light fixtures. The whole family's coming over, and if there's even a speck of dust in the house, my abuela will find it.
Here, I got a Swiffer duster to help with that.
A Swiffer what?
A Swiffer duster. It has this cool extendable handle that reaches 6 feet to get high and low, with fluffy dusters that easily trap and lock dust.
So, no more step stool?
No more step stool.
Easily trap and lock dust from hard-to-reach places with the Swiffer duster. Love it or your money back.
You know that Big Bargain detergent jug is 80% water, right?
80% water? I thought I was getting a better deal because it's so big.
If you want a better clean, Tide Pods are only 12% water. The rest is pure, concentrated cleaning ingredients.
Ooh, pass me the intercom thingy.
Attention shoppers. If you want a real deal, try Tide Pods.
Don't pay for water, pay for clean. If it's gotta be clean, it's gotta be Tide Pods.
Water content based on the leading bargain liquid detergent.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Jeff Stetson coming your way right now. Jeff Stetson is the brilliant mind behind the play The Meeting, which imagines a fictional encounter between Martin and Malcolm back in '65, and one of the exec producers of the new Nat Geo series, which dropped just last week, called Genius, MLKX. That said, Jeff Stetson, all right, you can push back on me any way you want to about my assessment.
Well, I respect the critique. I don't agree with it for Dr. King.
Okay.
Because you would then have to assume that he actually believed that the country would change in his lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But he believed that he was laying the foundation for the nonviolent movement in a country that would certainly fight it to its death, but eventually it would make a difference, that people would accept that that nonviolence is the only way to have lasting peace and change. Malcolm's militancy, I think, is necessary. After Dr. King was assassinated, as you clearly know, this country went up in flames because black people had enough.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we burned our own communities down in large part, but that response created all kinds of programs that were attempting to respond to the needs of black people, at least from an educational standpoint, from an employment standpoint, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult to suggest that militancy or even violence, unfortunately, doesn't have a certain kind of impact that you hope will create certain kinds of positive change. The reality, and let me say it this way, this is the country that loves John Wayne, not because he's a brilliant actor, but he epitomizes what this country is about. You will protect your family by any means necessary. You will do what you need to do in order to protect your country, on and on and on. That doesn't take place for black folks. Black heroes are not allowed really to fight to protect their family in the same way that it's okay and legitimate for the John Waynes in the society to do so. The first time I was on your show, it was to promote my novel called Blood in the Leaves. That
Mm-hmm.
book really tried to deal with questions of nonviolence versus, some kind of response that's important to have. And I talk about how frightening it is to this country to have a black John Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think, unfortunately, people still have to respond in a way. You look at every movie where there's a hero. Mel Gibson dies at the end shouting freedom. It's okay to fight for the right to prove yourself as a man in this country. And that's been the kind of reality we've been dealing with as a people. It's just, here's the thing that has always bothered me with the nonviolent movement, as much as I appreciate the courage that it took to do so. Young kids, 5, 6, 7 years old, see their fathers and mothers spat upon and mistreated, and they don't fight back. This is a country where you're supposed to fight back. So when your son or daughter sees their parents being brutalized for a movement, they're too young to understand what's happening. All they understand is their parents can't protect themselves, which means they can't protect me.
Mm.
And that establishes a certain kind of trauma for young people. And it's been true that when you look at some of the kids that grew up in the civil rights movement, they got spat upon in the restaurants and beaten, and their loved ones were assassinated and murdered, they're still living through that trauma.
No,
so how do we change it? I don't know. But from my standpoint, I couldn't tolerate, and I still have great respect for the people who sat at the
Sure.
Food counters and gotten beaten, but that's not me.
That ain't you,
and
no.
if my son was in jeopardy, you best believe I would fight by any means necessary.
I got a retort to that when we come forward in our main moments with Jeff Stetson on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
I got a little less than 3 minutes left here. Just 3 minutes left with Jeff Stetson. I've enjoyed this immensely, by the way, Jeff. My only retort is simply this. I believe, and I believe it because I do it every day myself, I believe that King is the greatest American this country's ever produced. That's my assessment. But I also believe, to your point, that one can be, how might I put this, one can be empathic, one can be even supportive of MLK's vision, his work, and his witness without being a pacifist. You can do that.
I think that's absolutely true, but I leave you with this. When the only people who believe in nonviolence are the people getting beaten, you probably need to rethink the strategy. Lastly, let me thank you for all you do, and if your listeners don't remember this, one of the most important and brilliant books written about Dr. King is written by a guy named Tavis Smiley called Death of a King. So I would recommend that you read that book. It just deals with the last year of his life, and it does so in such a way where every page shows you his brilliance and courage.
Any compliment I get means something to me, but when it comes from Jeff Stetson, because all opinions are not created equal. I will tell you that. All opinions are not created equal, but when Jeff Stetson says that, it means something. You get chill bumps off of that. His name is Jeff Stetson. He is brilliant in his own right. That play, The Meeting, that came to the fore in 1987, really changed the conversation in this country about Martin and Malcolm. If you ever get a chance to see it, whenever it's staged anywhere near you, please go see this play, this stage play called The Meeting. And it is that play that inspires this new Nat Geo series that just commenced last week. It's called Genius, MLKX, and our friend and brother Jeff Stetson is one of the exec producers of that powerful series that I can assure you you will enjoy when you get a chance to see all 8 hours of it. Jeff Stetson, as always, sir, an honor to be in dialogue with you. Thank you for your work and your witness ongoing, and I wish you nothing but the best in the days, weeks, and months to come, my friend.
I appreciate you, my brother.
Good to have you on. That is our program for today. 3 hours gone just like that. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until then, thanks for tuning in to Tavis Smiley. And as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica